Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm David Comisford. I'm the founder of EduSourced, and as part of our ongoing experiential learning webinar series, today the faculty behind the award-winning UTDesign program from the UT Dallas School of Engineering will be presenting on the topic of managing multidisciplinary programs. So it's a lot of words, but I think it's really great content. I look forward to jumping into it. But before we get started, we will have time for questions at the end. There is a questions box in the GoToWebinar control panel. So if you find that, as we go, feel free to write in questions, and then at the end, we'll tackle those questions and have a discussion from there. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the UT Dallas faculty design team. They're our clients and good friend of the company. And up first, speaking will be Robert. Robert?
All right, thank you, David. First of all, I want to thank David and the EduSourced team for giving us the opportunity to present and share some of these ideas. There we go. All right. So I'm going to show you, first of all, these are the three of us who are going to be presenting the webinar today. I'm the one over on the right, Robert, and my colleagues Todd and Joe. So I teach the Capstone course in the Mechanical Engineering Department here at UT Dallas, and Todd and Joe teach the Capstone course in the Biomedical Engineering Department. So I joined UT Dallas in 2012. Todd came on board in 2013, and Joe the year after that. So we've got average of 5 years or so experience teaching the course. All of us came from an industry background. This is actually our first academic job for all three of us. Before we get into the material for today, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge some of the people that have contributed in a great way to the success we've had and where we are today. And first of all, the Capstone community nationwide is a very generous group of people, and they've shared a lot of their ideas and inspiration with us. And so we want to properly acknowledge that, you know, some of the things we're going to show today have come from ideas that we've got from discussions and presentations and things that we've seen at conferences, and we are grateful for that. And we also want to acknowledge the UTDesign staff here at UT Dallas, and also the administration, who have really gone a long way to make this program a success and provide the facilities and the resources that we need. So this is the kind of 5 major topics that we're going to touch on today, and I'll bring this slide up each time we change topics, so you can kind of follow along and know where we're at. I'm going to start with kind of a general overview of the Capstone program and UT Dallas in general, so you can kind of put some of our remarks in context. You know, I will say that, you know, the thing we were going to share kind of a lot of details today, not a whole lot of big picture stuff, but we're going to kind of go into a lot of details about our program and how we do things here. You know, for those of you joining us, some of this may apply to you, some of it may not. You may be able to perhaps modify some of the things we do to work for you, but we just kind of want to give you a good sense of how our program works in a lot of different areas. So first of all, we are at University of Texas at Dallas. There's about 28,000 students here. We're an urban research university located just north of the city of Dallas. It's a relatively young university. The engineering school itself is about almost 30 years old now. We offer undergraduate degrees, the ones that are shown here: biomedical engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical, computer, software engineering, and computer science. So we have capstone programs corresponding to each one of those undergraduate degrees. With the exception of software engineering and computer science, all the other engineering disciplines do a 2-semester capstone, all team-based projects, and many of those are multidisciplinary projects. You can get, just to give you some sense of the size, you can see here that in fall 2016 we had about 7,000 students enrolled in the engineering school. So those numbers are growing quite a bit. So if we looked at the numbers for this year, they would be even larger than what's shown here. There's sort of one central idea, you might even think of this kind of as a mission statement that guides all of the decisions we make and the things we do, and that really is that through the capstone course, we want to help students make the transition from their academic career into their professional career. This is the bridge that connects their university experience with their professional experience, and that's the idea that's behind a lot of what we do. And so the most fundamental part of that is having industry-sponsored projects, and so we place a big emphasis on that, and we do that because those projects give students an opportunity to experience the complexities, the constraints, the messiness that is inherent in those kind of projects. So that's the reason we do it. It's a lot more work on our part to do that, but it is well worth it. A few of the things about, just a kind of few of the general things about our program. We charge sponsors $15,000. UTDesign provides the first $2,000 toward project materials, and we also provide an additional $1,000 towards services in our on-campus machine shop here. If materials for the project exceed the $2,000, then we'll expect the sponsors to pick up those additional costs. The really nice thing that we have here is that the sponsorship fee, the money from that above and beyond the materials and services, all of that flows directly to the UTDesign program. There's no university overhead extracted out of that, and that's the funding that we use to operate and support our program. One of the things that, if you're going to do industry-sponsored projects, that really does make it easy is giving intellectual property to the sponsors. And we're fortunate here that the university doesn't want to make any claim to intellectual property from these projects. And so when we go out and talk to companies, one of the first things we usually tell them is, you're going to own all the results of this project. The other thing that makes it easy for companies is that they provide funding to us as a gift, and we don't have to negotiate a contract with them, so we don't have to spend a lot of time going back and forth about terms and conditions and that kind of thing. We kind of have a handshake agreement, and we go from there. So we mentioned the term UTDesign a number of times, and it's probably good to kind of stop and define explicitly what we mean by UTDesign. And I think it's easiest to think of UTDesign as an umbrella organization that exists at the dean's office level. The program was started in 2009, and you can think of it as providing the facilities and the administrative services that we need to run Capstone in all the different departments. So the academic part of Capstone still lives in the individual engineering departments. So for example, mechanical engineering students sign up for my mechanical engineering Capstone course. But the difference is when they go into the studio to work on their project, they're going into a shared facility that is used by all Capstone students. And the same thing is true for the staff that we have. Those things are shared across all of the engineering disciplines, and that gives us a number of efficiencies and advantages. And obviously, being able to share those resources so that electrical engineering department doesn't have to have a workspace, and mechanical engineering doesn't have to have a separate workspace. Because of the structure of this, multidisciplinary projects become a lot easier to do, and we'll talk more about that as the webinar goes on about how we handle those. But I also put here attitude, because the other thing is that students see the instructors, all the different Capstone instructors in the different departments working together, collaborating together. When the students are in the studio, they're sitting at a table, and there may be students from a different department sitting at the table adjacent to them. And it's all about building up this mindset that that's just the normal way that business is done in engineering. So as I mentioned, the faculty, we all work together. We have periodic meetings. We discuss issues that are common to all of our Capstone programs in the different departments. And from when you go out and talk to a company, it's really nice to be able to go to them and say, what problems do you have? We bring those problems back, and then we figure out how we're going to staff those internally from our different disciplines. And so from the company perspective, they have a single conduit or interface into the university, and that's through the UTDesign program. One of the things we did a couple of years ago, and we've done a couple of times since then, is put together some promotional videos. And I wanted to show this both as an introduction to some of the things about our program, but also just to give you an idea of what of the kind of video that you might put together if you haven't done so already to help promote your program. So.
clinically viable wearable sensor.
Control platform using silicon carbide MOSFETs and CAMOS protocol.
The MPT gate hip simulator.
Electrostatic discharge, creating a pulse current source.
Take semiconductor lids and place them on top of semiconductor module packs.
Big data analysis for internet topology.
It's the #1 selling app on the iOS App Store.
The literature says that the torques of the human hip are actually very small. What this does basically is it simulates the vertical and the angular displacement of the hip in order to test Dr. Gregg's powered prosthetics.
The goal here was to provide physical therapists with the ability to hold patients accountable for completing exercises at home.
There's a lot of devices that are connected to the internet today, and we wanted a way to actually map out those devices into a really integratable way.
To be able to conceptualize a design from the requirements to seeing it working and in action, it is really, really fulfilling, and I think that's why I wanted to be an engineer.
I think one of the biggest challenges was the integration of the software side with the hardware side.
Some unique challenges that my team has had to overcome were providing a very specialized system to a group of people who didn't know how to acquire such a system.
UTDesign helped us a lot in this project by basically giving us the room to work. They gave us our table that's right behind me. They gave us all the tools necessary to work out of the machine over there. And they gave us a workshop in the back that we could go to at any time. And then UTDesign sort of took the burden of ordering and processing shipments off of us.
Once we had mapped out the devices, what we ended up doing was we used that mapping to control those devices remotely within the network. As a proof of concept, we connected a drone and then controlled the drone remotely via a laptop.
It's a story. Like, it's so deep, you get so involved, you can actually feel all the emotions. So now that there will be an Android version out, we will be able to reach so many more people, and I can have one on my phone, so that would be awesome.
So in the back of the video, you may have seen some shots of our UTDesign Studio. The studio is really a critical part of what we do. You know, if we ask a lot of our students in Capstone, and part of our responsibility is to provide them with the facilities and the resources that they need to be successful. And so in terms of facilities, we have the studio. You see kind of a few photographs here. We have about 30,000 square feet of space solely dedicated to supporting Capstone. We have the sort of central area is we call the open lab, and there are tables here. The students will have 24/7 access to the open lab. They can, and then when they go in there, we have larger tables. For some of the projects, we have smaller tables that are outfitted with electrical test and measurement equipment that are more appropriate for some of the other projects. Along the back wall, we have some private project rooms. These typically will get used if a project has safety or security considerations. Sometimes sponsors will have high value equipment or some technology that they do not want to be seen out in the open lab. And so the students will have a private room that they have key card access to. We have a small fabrication shop. This is not a machine shop. We have a separate machine shop here on campus, but this shop has hand tools, small power tools, things that students need to kind of work on and assemble their projects. The other key part of our studio is the conference rooms, and these things are really an invaluable part of the process. Students can book these online. Each one of them is equipped with whiteboards, AV, and they can be used by teams to have team meetings, or they can also be used if teams are hosting their sponsor here on campus for a presentation, for example. So the organization looks like this. As we mentioned, the UTDesign staff services the Capstone in all the different departments, and we have a number of different staff members who take care of everything from purchasing to overseeing our studio and so forth. Then within each of the engineering disciplines, we have an engineering director. Those are the traditional course instructors. Engineering directors oversee technical managers. These are what many programs call the faculty advisors. The faculty advisors then, of course, work with the individual teams, and the teams then interface with outside the university with their sponsoring organization. All right. Kind of going back to that mission statement that we mentioned about, about wanting to bridge the gap between the academic and professional experience. Part of that is bringing the real world into the classroom. And so I want to talk a little bit about how a couple of ways that we do that here. First of all is getting industry-sponsored projects. And project recruiting is done as a team effort by, we have some dedicated UTDesign staff members who do that, as well as the Capstone instructors themselves. One of the most important things that we've learned from experience is, as you talk to sponsors, is that they should be able to clearly explain what they're looking for in their project. If they can't articulate that purpose and goals, then that's a project that may be a challenge to handle. Because you think about, you're going to have a team of inexperienced students, inexperienced engineers, and if the company doesn't understand what they want to do, it's going to be really difficult for the team to understand. So, some of the most successful projects we've had are ones where where the sponsors come out and said, at the end of this project, we want X, Y, and Z. A few other things, we just put together some of the top tips, maybe if you don't have experience doing this. This is really just like sales. You've got to build personal relationships, take people out to breakfast, take them out to lunch. Those relationships are the things that help you, that lead to projects and help to build the confidence that sponsors have in our program. Alumni are a great source of projects. We've had a lot of students have graduated and been great champions within their new companies for UTDesign, and many of them have come back and actually been corporate mentors themselves. We've had information sessions, so it's very resource intensive if you have to go out and go meet individual companies. If you can get several of them to come to you at once and talk to all of them together, that's a very efficient way to do it. So we've done that. Maybe 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we have cookies and drinks, and we have maybe talk to 5 companies at once here on campus. Professional and trade organizations are a great place to go for projects. I've gotten a number of them just by being active in my local ASME chapter. And the other thing I would say is, don't constrain yourself to just what you think are the traditional engineering industries. Our local medical school has been a great source of projects. We've done projects for local museums. Even some other kinds of non-engineering companies have been the source of some good projects. The other thing that is really important is from day one in the class, getting off on the right foot and establishing the right mindset. And so the 4 words that you see there, welcome to the real world, 5 words, I guess it is the first thing that students see on the first slide that we show on the first day. And that really does set the tone for everything that follows. And we make it clear to them that these are real customers with real projects that have a stake in the outcome of those projects, and we expect them to act and to work as engineers, and we treat them as such. And when we make it very clear to them that this is not a class, this is not just an ordinary class, this is a lab project, this isn't a do it the night before it's due project. And talking about all these things up front and being very explicit about our expectations, I think, is something that's helped us be successful. The other thing is we've really transitioned from academic terminology to industry terminology, and here you see the mapping between those 2 categories. And we try as much as we can to use the terms over in that right-hand column, that industry terminology, to help students get used to hearing and hearing those kind of words and those terms. Okay. All right, I'm going to hand it over now to Joe, who's going to talk about the next section of the presentation.
All right, thank you, Robert. So I'm going to start talking a little bit about how we actually structure our course. Given that these are still students, we need to give them a little bit of a framework in terms of being able to be successful in the projects, because for a lot of them, this is the first time they've really worked on a project of this scale. Whether if they haven't had an internship before, especially true. So to help get them started, we have designed this curriculum around here where we really focus on non-technical professional topics that they need to be successful on their team. We do talk about things like teamwork skills, professional skills. We talk about some practical engineering design considerations and going through that whole process. We spend a great deal of time talking about project management, thinking about things, how to build their own schedule and work breakdown structure. The other thing we do that I think we'll talk about a little bit more later is we have frequent guest speakers, and those add to the course a lot. And the other thing I want to mention is that like we said, like Robert said, we have a two semester course sequence. In the first semester, we go through this all these curriculum materials during our, we don't call them classes, we call them training sessions. But we have several days, several class periods that are scheduled as an off period from no training, where we let the students work on their projects, you know, especially or they're meeting with their sponsor, doing some of the bigger milestones like the preliminary design review. And we found that that really helps sort of build the team bonding, gives them the opportunity to work together more often, which is one of the things that's often a challenge with the student, all the student schedules they have together. And then once they get to the second semester, they really spend most of the time during the official class period working on their project. So we really want them to have that time to work together to get things done. Within our training sessions, though, you know, we have merged our mechanical engineering and biomedical engineering courses as part of our, and we'll talk more about the multidisciplinary aspects later on. But one of the big things we found is having this large classroom is that we need to have some really active learning strategies so that we keep the students engaged. And so shown here on the slide, just a few of the things we do. We have things like clicker quizzes, where we ask, you know, both some basic questions and also some really more thought-provoking questions, where there's really no one right answer, but we really pose these questions to get the students thinking and discussing amongst themselves and discussing with the classroom of some of the issues that are involved in things like project management and teamwork. We have some team activities where they'll, you know, review and, you know, build some agendas and minutes just to get some ideas of how do they go through some of these more things they're going to do on their project. And we really try to spend as much time doing classroom discussions as opposed to just, you know, sort of a one-way lecture. And to get all the teams participating, we've gone as far as, you know, calling on specific teams and keeping on track of which teams we've called on throughout the semester to make sure that everybody has a chance to participate. The other thing, like I mentioned, that we found has been really successful and well received by the students is guest lectures. So we have a couple of types, internal and external. So our internal ones is actually, we've been collaborating with our business communication instructors here at the School of Management at UT Dallas. And we've actually worked with a team there to develop a special curriculum that really focuses on teamwork, how their team's going to operate together, how to deal with conflict. We've also have sessions where we have the engineering team leaders go to a special leadership training where they get a chance to talk about what's working for them and what's not working for them, and all the team leaders get a chance to communicate with each other, to learn from each other. And then, you know, in the second semester, before the teams do a presentation, we have a presentation skills class to help them review some of those important skills there. The other kind of guest lectures that are really well received as well are ones that we bring from industry. You know, we've had things, topics such as, you know, innovation, you know, ethics, real-world project management that brings in some of the things that we don't talk so much about, such as, you know, how do you budget for people's time and people's pay and so forth. And all these topics we think they're really well received by students. Their students are really engaged in asking questions of the guest lecturers. And you find that it really helps reinforce the topics that we're presenting, because the students are seeing it's not just us instructors talking about it. This is actually, these types of things are actually used in the real world. You know, like Robert said, we are really trying to get the students used to the mindset of the real world, but we recognize, like I said, that they are still students and they need a little bit of guidance in terms of how to get a project from the ground starting point of defining what the problem is, all the way to the very last stage of, you know, validating your design and handing it off to the customer. So what's shown here is some of the steps, some of the major deliverables that the teams are delivering in both of the semesters. They start off with, you know, from the very beginning of meeting with their sponsor to really define what the problem is, what the project definition is, what are the requirements, what are the scopes, basically what's needed for success in the project. They have a few they meet with the sponsors on a regular basis. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about managing projects, but some of the bigger milestones are their preliminary design review and their critical design review, which we've really designed to sort of mimic what you would see in a sort of a real world engineering company in terms of getting design from start to end. And then I mentioned at the very end, we cap off the whole project with what we call our UTDesign Expo, where all the teams have an opportunity to present their project as sort of an elevator pitch style to a series of judges who come visit their table. And the students get pretty excited. They have a competition, and then we open up the studio to the public, so students really get a chance to show off and be proud of the design that they've done. A couple of things I want to point out that are some of our more recent additions are the ones that are highlighted in bold here. These detailed design approval meeting, project readiness review, and mandatory first prototype. And what all these essentially are sort of internal milestones that we, as the instructors or the engineering directors, we meet with the teams individually to make sure that, for example, their design is ready to be presented to the sponsor during the critical design review. We want them to be set and don't want them to go to the sponsor with a half-completed design. The mandatory first prototype is 1 month before the expo, where we actually require the students to show us a working demo of their final product. And we found that really helps, push up the deadline in terms of when the students are sort of working lots of hours, staying up all night, trying to get things done, so that they have one last month before the actual expo to fix any issues that they found that have come up, and to do some real testing of their device so that they can actually validate their design before handing it off to the customer. We've also been thinking about adding maybe one more in the first semester to review their preliminary design review. And so it is a decent amount of work to meet with all the individual teams, but we found it's well worth it. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we manage projects. First start off by talking about sort of the team of players that are involved in this, starting from the directors. As like Robert said, the directors are the instructors for the course, sort of the traditional instructors, and we're involved in overseeing sort of all the UT design program for our students. We conduct these training sessions or the classes. We maintain the schedule and deliverables, and we do the actual grading of the evaluation deliverables and so forth. One of the things we really want to point out is that teaching Capstone, we're trying to have all these sort of guideposts for the students really does take a lot of time. And Todd's going to talk a little bit more about how we spend time collaborating, but it's really important we find that the faculty, Capstone faculty, be given adequate time, and we're fortunate that UT Dallas and our departments really support that. The other critical member of the team here is the technical managers, which is our faculty. So each team is assigned a faculty advisor, or we call them technical managers, that really are sort of the internal resource for the team. They're the experts in that field for their project, so the teams can go to them for guidance. And the technical manager can point them to different resources that they might be aware of. They might give them tutorials on certain things that are important for their project. But one of the key points that we stress to the TMs is that they should not be doing the project work, right? They're there to provide guidance, provide some, technical expertise in an area about how to build a certain portion of it, how to build a certain piece of things. But they're not doing the project work itself, and that's one of the key points to keep the IP separate, like Robert was talking about, and to sort of make sure the TMs are on board with this, the whole program. We do hold a training session at the beginning of each project to meet with the TMs to go over this process and to answer any questions they may have. And then finally, there is the corporate mentor, which is really the sponsor. And the key thing we hear that we found, especially with the most successful projects, is when the corporate mentor really recognizes that they're there to not only establish the requirements for the project, what the goal of the project is, but they're there really to guide the team technically as well, right? They need to be able to communicate with the team on a technical level. It is a customer project, but they're also giving back to the university in the sense that they are mentoring these students, right? Think of these students as their interns. We have had a lot of corporate mentors who go on later to hire the students in full-time positions afterwards. So it's been fairly successful in that manner. Just like the TMs, both our corporate mentors are required to, the corporate mentors are also required to meet with the teams on a weekly basis. And we try to emphasize that to the team because it's really critical in the beginning to help define their project really well. And just like the TMs, to help orient them, we have a training session at the beginning of the project to familiarize the corporate mentors, especially for those who are new with what the project process is like. So all those people here are working with the teams, and so the question is, how do we form the teams? And this is really where we started using EduSourced this semester as a great tool to help build the teams. All the students meet the first class period of the semester. We introduce all the projects. We give them some time to ask questions about it. We tell them, what kind of team we're going to have, if it's, all biomedical students or all mechanical, or if it's a mixture. And we give the students some time to complete a bid or a polling process where they get to rank their projects. They talk about their qualifications, tell us why they want to be on their top choices. And one of the nice things we had starting this semester is we had the summary sheet shown here on the right, produced for us by EduSourced, that kind of gives us a one-page snapshot of everything about that student's bid, their qualifications and what projects they want. And we take these forms and we do basically we have a big meeting with the instructors, and we organize all the teams. And generally we're pretty successful getting students on their top ranked choices. So once the teams are formed, I'm going to hand it over to Todd now to talk about how things are handled on a day-to-day form.
Thank you, Joe. All right, so now that we've seen the support structure that we wrap around the teams to help them all be successful, we want to talk a little bit about the tools that we use directly with the teams to help us monitor the teams and make sure that things are progressing forward as we'd expect. So we have a very robust set of tools that we've either acquired or come up with here to use that we think really help keep all the teams on track so they successfully complete their projects. And the first one listed you see there is the weekly communication. So each individual in each team gets a weekly communication score. It's not tied to the number of hours they work, but we do track the number of hours they work. We also track whether or not they held meetings with their technical manager and their corporate mentor, and whether or not each individual attended those meetings. Each of those meetings has a required written agenda and a required set of minutes from the meeting to document the results of the meeting. So all of those tied together are evaluated by us and by our teaching assistants, who then pull together a weekly communication score for each of the teams and the students. As you saw earlier in the flow chart for the process that we put the teams through, we have a very well-defined set of milestones and deliverables for the teams to help keep them on track. And then one of the really big things we do are the last three bullets you see there, which are the evaluations that happen throughout the course of the project. The team members evaluate themselves and each other on their teams 4 times throughout the course of the project. Their technical manager also evaluates the teams 4 times, and then the individuals 3 times, and we'll talk more in detail about these in a minute. And then the corporate mentor, the customer, evaluates the team itself halfway through the project and at the completion of the project. So to go into just a little more detail, so the weekly communication, our motivation really here is to make sure that our teams are in regular contact with their support structure, with their technical manager, with their corporate mentors, and within the team itself. We try to get them to realize early on that this is a big team thing. We tell them that I is not an acceptable word, it's we, that they're a team, that they're going to succeed or fail together as a team. So we want to make sure they're in good communication with all their resources to keep them moving forward and to not get too far off track. As I mentioned, each team gets a weekly grade based on the agendas and minutes they do and their attendance at meetings. And just kind of like in the real world, if you don't report your time that you worked for the week, or in this case also, if you don't complete the weekly communication survey that says how many meetings you attended, you get a 0 for that week. So it's kind of like not being paid in the real world. So the timesheet, again, back to the hours, we do track how many hours that each engineer works on their project each week. And really this is kind of to hold them accountable to each other and to themselves on their team. And it also helps us as the instructors or the engineering directors to kind of get a better feel for their level of commitment to the project and how much time they're putting in relative to their team members and to other teams. We don't have an established number that says, you must work this many hours per week, but we do have some guidelines that we follow that kind of help us understand from history and experience whether or not they're putting in enough effort to keep their projects moving forward. We used to do this through a Qualtrics survey that each one member of the team would fill out each week for all the team members. But now that we've transitioned over to EduSourced, EduSourced actually has a time tab where the individuals can just kind of on a rolling basis, a regular basis, report hours as they complete a task or they complete a meeting. They can go into that tab and just click in the number of hours they work and write a brief note saying of what they did, a technical manager meeting or worked on a SolidWorks drawing or whatever it happens to be. Again, back to the hours, we keep going back to this, it seems like. Our target internally for us as the instructors is kind of 10 hours a week per person, and that's what we told them. That was the expectation that we set up front with them. But again, it's not a hard and fast, you have to work 10 hours. We understand that other things in life and other classes get in the way sometimes. But again, it's just kind of a metric for us to look at to see if we feel like the teams are putting in enough effort to be successful. EduSourced has a really nice thing to track and kind of tabulate all of these times for us. You can see an example of it here on the bottom. And the one key thing there too is the contribution ratio. So you can take a look at it and see the team members' individual contributions to versus his team, relative to his team members. So it kind of shows if somebody's kind of falling behind, not pulling their weight on the project or not. Again, back into the meetings with your technical managers and your corporate mentors. Again, we tell them that they're required to meet weekly. We realize that obviously they're not always going to meet weekly. There's always things that happen, corporate mentors out of town or something, so they don't always get to meet on a weekly basis. But again, this is just it's a metric for us as the instructors to look at to make sure that they're staying in regular contact, to keep them getting too far off track from what the requirements for the project are. And then again, we ask the individual team members now, they have a weekly survey that they complete in EduSourced, which says we had a meeting and I attended, we had a meeting and I did not attend, or there was no meeting. And if there's no meeting or they did not attend, they have to give a reason why. So previously, again, Qualtrics, we did this and it was one team member submitted for the entire team. Now with EduSource, it's set up where each individual has to go complete that survey each week. So they have to kind of hold themselves accountable and their team members can see their responses as well. So the deliverables, as you saw back on the flow chart that Joe presented a few slides back, are fairly extensive, but we feel like that this is the best way to keep these inexperienced engineers kind of moving forward at a steady pace so that they complete the projects as expected. And each time there's a deliverable, whether it's a written deliverable or a major presentation, we have developed a set of pretty extensive guidelines that we post on EduSourced for the teams. We also discuss those in the training sessions that we hold. Each of those deliverables is submitted to one of the milestones in EduSourced, and at the bottom you can kind of see a small section of our milestones that we have for our current teams that are in progress right now. So each time there's a milestone, the team will just click on it, upload their file, either their slides or their PDF document for the written deliverable to that milestone, and then they don't have to submit it anywhere else. We don't have to use our internal learning management system or anything else like that. We can just keep everything in EduSourced in one place, so the teams only have to log into one place. The other thing that we do is for each deliverable that the team has to submit, we have a rubric that helps us in evaluating the deliverable that they've submitted. We post those ahead of time for the teams to look at so they know exactly how they're going to be evaluated when they either turn in that deliverable or get ready to do a big formal presentation. And those additionally also help us with our ABET assessment, helps us break things down into the right categories that we need to complete our annual ABET assessment. I think one of the most important things that we do is, are all the different evaluations that we do for the teams and for the individuals as they go through this process. The peer evaluation is critical. I mean, that's where the teams live and the team members interact on a daily basis. So we are able to, 4 times throughout the project, have them evaluate each other and themselves. We used to use CATME directly and have kind of worked with the question set that comes from CATME. and I've kind of got that integrated into EduSourced now for us as a customized survey. It's not a part of EduSource's standard product, but it's one that we've had EduSourced build a survey for us to use so that we can use questions that are similar to the ones that are in CAPME. So any of you that are familiar with CAPME will probably recognize the category names there. The graph you see there is essentially the output from EduSourced that the individuals see that shows their responses and the results of the survey for them. Our internal faculty, our technical managers that work directly with each team, are also asked to provide performance evaluations on the teams 4 times throughout the project, typically about the middle and then the end of each semester. And in the categories you see on the bottom left are the ones that we're asking the technical managers to rate the team as a whole on. Then every time except for the very first midterm at the end of the first semester and then both times in the second semester, we also ask the technical managers to evaluate each individual team member on the 3 categories you see on the bottom right. We feel like they work the most closely with them on a weekly basis as well, and so they are the best position to give us the feedback that we need to understand what's happening within the teams. And then lastly, the corporate mentor as a customer, we ask them just to evaluate the team as a whole. Again, the customer is focused on the overall result. And so again, through EduSourced, and all of these evaluations now are driven through surveys in EduSourced. So at halfway through the project, the end of the first semester, and then at the end of the project, the corporate mentor will evaluate the team on the categories you see there on the bottom. One additional thing, for all of these evaluations that we do through EduSource's surveys, there are 2 additional text fields at the bottom. One is a set of comments to give back to the individual or the team. And then the second one is a set of confidential comments if any individual, technical manager, corporate mentor needs to make specific comments back to us, the instructors, the engineering directors. So they have a box specifically for that so that those comments can come directly back just to us that nobody else will see in case they need to relay some information to us. And then I think both Robert and Joe have mentioned, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a couple of slides when we kind of talk about multidisciplinary, but the engineering directors meet regularly to review all of the teams and all the individual engineers on the team. So all of this monitoring and evaluations and everything that we do, we actually do close the loop, go back and look at the results on a regular basis and take any action if we feel that is necessary. So we often meet with individuals or with entire teams if we feel like there are some issues that we need to discuss with them to see what's happening either individually or within their team and their team dynamics. If things are bad enough, we will ask the individual or the team to write up an improvement plan, similar to what you would do if you got a bad review at work. So we ask them to go ahead and do that so that we've, number one, got some written documentation on what they're asked to do. And then we always follow up on that at the end of the period that was established to make sure that they are moving forward and meeting those goals. On rare occasions, sometimes it becomes necessary that things don't improve, and sometimes we do have to dismiss a student from a team. It's rare. It has happened a couple of times, but it is pretty rare. But that ultimate, real world firing of an employee can happen in this situation. So the last section that we want to talk about is we've been hinting at and promising all webinar long that we do things in a multidisciplinary fashion, and we've hinted at it a few times, but we want to kind of go into a couple of details just to kind of let you know the process and what we've gone through over the last few years. So starting back in the summer of 2014, Robert and I began collaborating on Capstone. Robert had just completed his first cohort of ME only students, and in biomed we were preparing for our very first cohort, which was starting that fall. We collaborated on material. Robert had either developed or required a fairly substantial amount of material to teach his course, and we took that and modified it further and expanded it, and then both of us started teaching that same material to our individual classes separately for the next couple of years. And then starting last fall in 2016, we made the decision through the departments and with the dean that we were able to actually merge the courses and teach them together in one large class. So Robert and I and Joe coming on board joined the team at that point. And at that point, we taught the entire cohort of mechanical and biomedical engineers together in one large class. We finished the one cohort now. It finished in the spring a few months ago, and we're halfway through almost the second cohort of our joint class right now. So again, like I think Joe mentioned this earlier too, is we have all of these students together in the same training session or class, which is great for helping us do team level things, getting the teams bonding together and used to working together. In the first couple of years when we taught them separate, our classes were at different times. So trying to get the teams together was a difficult thing. So now with the ability to get everything together in one room, we get all the members of the team together at the same time, get them used to working together and functioning as a unit. Electrical engineering and computer science have also both provided students to some of our teams over the past couple of years. Sometimes when we have the need for those specialties, we will bring students from those courses over into ours as well. And typically they come and sit in our training classes with their team all together, so they get used to being functioning together as a single unit. The other thing that happens on a regular basis that is critical to keep our program moving forward is the three of us meet on a weekly basis, 1 or 2 times a week for probably 5 to 10 hours a week to keep evolving and growing the Capstone program here at UT Dallas. We review all the materials, make changes, make updates. We're consistently and constantly trying to see if we can flip things further. Joe talked about active learning earlier. And so we've gotten from the point of just presenting slides to the point now where it's a whole lot more interactive, and we're continuing to try to flip it even further to where the students can be more engaged and actively learning the topics that we need to cover with them. We're always updating our guidelines for our deliverables and the rubrics that we use to evaluate those deliverables. So if you want to learn more about Capstone and you're not familiar, I would highly suggest that you go to www.capstoneconf.org and take a look at the upcoming Capstone Design Conference in the summer of 2018. This is an outstanding conference. It's completely focused on Capstone and Capstone alone. It's also a small conference. It's usually about 250 people, which keeps it kind of intimate, where you can get to know people and talk and have conversations. Robert has been, I think, to the last 3. I've been to the last 2, and I think all 3 of us will be going to this one. I know for sure Robert will be going, since Robert happens to be the co-chair for the 2018 conference. So if you have any questions, robert.hart@utdallas.edu. Yeah, I'm on the committee somewhere, but I'm not sure what I'm doing yet. So just send your questions to Robert. But next summer we'll be up at Rochester Institute of Technology. It'll be our first time going up there, but the content and the interactions that you gain at these conferences are just incredible. If you're a Capstone instructor, I would highly encourage you to take a look and think about attending. And that is all we have for today. So we want to thank you for listening. We hope that some of the material and information we presented was helpful to you in your programs, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thanks so much, Todd. And we actually already have a number of questions and comments that have come in. So what I'm going to do at this point is read these out for the panel to react to. And then again, if you have further questions, feel free to continue to submit. We did have a number of questions asking, will this be available after the fact? And the answer is yes. It'll be up at edusourced.com by next Monday. We will have the slides as well as the video recording. The first question, though, was, is your development office involved in engaging corporate sponsors, or is this solely run through faculty?
Development
office. It's kind of a mixture. So some of the people who work for UTDesign staff members who do project recruiting are essentially part of the corporate relations staff here. They're kind of on loan.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The next one was just a comment, but I feel like I have to share it. It said, very jealous of your facility. It's really awesome.
Thanks, Keith.
That's Keith Stanfield, the other co-chair for the 2018 Capstone Conference from the University of Florida, by the way.
You nailed it. Okay, so the next one is, at what point are the teams formed? Is this over the summer or beginning of fall semester?
That happens right at the beginning of the semester. They bid the first week on projects. We spend part of the first training session letting them review the projects and asking questions, and then they have 3 or 4 days to complete their bid through a survey in EduSourced. And then we form the teams. In the second week of class, we announce the teams and get them working.
Okay, and the next question seems to be about your kind of organizational chart earlier. Is the technical manager an employee of UT Dallas, or are they from the sponsoring organization or elsewhere?
Yeah, so our technical managers are really, like we mentioned, are pulled from the faculty in our various departments. So we have thought about, hiring, some external technical managers sort of on a consulting part-time basis. But right now, all of our technical managers come from UT Dallas. They're all faculty.
Okay, next one is, how many students are enrolled in this course each year, and how many instructors are there for the course?
Well, the current cohort that's going on right now between biomed and mechanical has 205 students. We also have 23 students from electrical engineering that have been added to our team. So we have 228 total, I guess, on 38 teams. And you're talking to the 3 instructors. That's us.
And then on a yearly basis, then we actually teach separately a separate cycle of senior design, for one for biomedical engineering, one for mechanical engineering. Right. That's separate from the joint course.
And our numbers from fall to fall have been going up about 33% each year so far. So the last couple of 3 years.
And I have a question on that as a follow-up. Is that student increase, is that because your overall student body has increased, or has there just been enhanced popularity with this course?
I think just because the student body is increasing, plus the mechanical engineering program is only 7 years old, and biomedical is only 6 years old. So we've only had 2 or 3 cohorts respectively between each. So we're both still growing departments basically.
Okay. Next question.
This is a required course, so you can't. Yeah. You have to take this. This isn't an opt-in kind of optional capstone experience.
Right. Yeah, electrical engineering still teaches there separately at the moment. We're hoping they're going to fold them into the overall joint course here probably next fall, hopefully. And they're typically running 150 or more per year in theirs as well.
Okay, great. The next question is, do students have to have completed all other major requirements prior to taking the capstone?
I'll tackle that. So we do have a number of requirements. Usually we have a sort of a typical requirement of completing a number of engineering courses. They don't have to have completed every single engineering course, particularly electives, but they, for the most part, they have to complete all their core classes, and whether it's biomedical or mechanical engineering. Typically students are doing electives or other subjects that are required to graduate while they're doing senior design at the same time.
But it is at the bottom of the degree plan flow chart. So it's ideally it should be taken in the last 2 semesters.
Right.
Okay, the next question is, thank you for the excellent overview of the capstone experiences. Did you encounter any surprises in developing the program and working with companies and students? And if so, what were they and how did you respond? So that's probably a big enough question for a whole separate webinar, but were there any major ticket items that really surprised you guys as you put this program together?
Keep going. I don't know. Well, it's Karen, and Karen's from here, so we can always talk to Karen offline, I guess. But I guess the question back would be: are you talking about putting together our individual programs, or putting together things as a multidisciplinary program? I guess as far as individually, it's it is what it is to develop a course. As far as multidisciplinary, I don't know. We've just kind of fallen into a really good partnership, I think, and been able to agree on just about everything that we want to do. I mean, we always have our little differences, of course, like everybody does. But overall, I mean, internally, things have worked really well. As far as working with companies, nothing more than usual. I mean, you have the occasional one that says they can't sponsor a project anymore, but we have to go out and find more projects. And students we've got some really great students here at UT Dallas. So I think we're pretty fortunate in that respect. We've got some really sharp students here.
I'll go ahead.
I was going to add just one thing with regard to companies. It's maybe not so much a surprise, but we've noticed there's different styles of sort of sponsors. We have some sponsors who are very technically involved, and we've had other sponsors who are sort of more high level and don't get into the nitty gritty details. And so what we've really tried to do in those cases is we try to ask that sponsor, that point of contact, if they can provide other resources within their company that can be an expert, for example, in certain aspect of software or certain electrical design, even if they're not necessarily meeting with the team every week. But we found that that's useful, is that, somebody at the sponsoring company needs to provide that technical support for the team as needed, and not just a high level support.
What I was going to add was, I think one thing that I learned was you have to be very explicit in the instructions you give to the students. And we mentioned these guidelines a number of times, and we write them and we rewrite them and we revise them, and then we see things that still don't work and we make notes and we revise them the next time. And trying to get 238 students to all go in the same direction and do the same thing. And if you can say, what color is the sky, and there will be 10 of them who won't say blue. And so it's that's been an ongoing challenge, is to communicate very explicitly and clearly so that everybody knows what we're supposed to be doing.
Okay, we've got one more question. Do you have any issues not using contracts from the company side? And have you seen any issues with the gift model, because it is really more of a fee for service?
No.
Go ahead.
I can't think of an example where we've had an issue with that.
No.
We monitor project. We don't want sponsors to be surprised in the end or disappointed. So we monitor the health of projects very closely throughout the whole life cycle of the project, using all those tools that Todd talked about. And so if we see things aren't going well, or it looks like the sponsor may not get what they want, we intervene early and try to address those issues. So no, we've not really had any issues that a contract would have helped with.
Yeah, and I'd add to that, it's we've talked to people at other programs or sponsors who have worked with other universities' capstone programs, where they basically threw an idea over the wall, and the school said, okay, come back at the end of 2 semesters and we'll show you your result. So there's no interaction between the sponsor and the team. So having this weekly interaction between the sponsor and the team, we think, is critical to make sure that we don't have these kind of problems, at the end of the project cycle. So we've had a fairly good success rate. I'd say it's about 100% of making sponsors happy. We may have 1 or 2 that didn't quite get what they want in the end, but that's typical. But for the most part, we don't have those problems because of the close interaction between the sponsor, the teams, and us kind of monitoring everything as it goes along.
Okay, and I have one last question myself, just to close this out, but personally curious, what has been the student reception to UTDesign? I've seen at some programs, I hear students may complain, this is really burdensome. Yeah, it's real world, but we're having to do a lot more work as a result. So, I guess it's exciting on one hand, but on the other hand, it's maybe a little scary to the students sometimes. What's been your experience?
You gotta do it.
No, go ahead.
Well, it is kind of a shock to their systems. They used to be insulated students, and we kind of throw them in the deep end of the pool without a life preserver. But overall, they grumble about the amount. They say we have to write too much. We have to do too many documents. And then we hear back from our alums a couple of years from now that go, thank you for teaching us how to do Gantt charts and work breakdown structures and minutes, because that's half of my job. So they come to appreciate it, but as with all younger adults, it takes them a little time to see the benefits of the hard work we're putting them through, I think.
Okay, well, great. Well, Todd, Joe, and Robert, thank you for presenting, and thanks to everybody who attended. If you have any follow-up questions, you can email me, david@edusourced.com, and I'll share them with the team. But also, again, the slides will be shared on Monday, and that has the 3 gentlemen's email addresses as well if you need to get in touch with them directly. So thank you, everybody, for your time, and have a great holiday season. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you.